In the end, all you want to do is write something honest that doesn't take too long. Please just be honest with me. In 1973, Eric Clapton got a guitar from George Harrison. Harrison did not say a word. Then there wasn't a jam session, there was a fight. They didn't fight with their hands, but threw music for 2 hours over the same woman. Everyone there knew that Eric had won. 3 years before Clapton admitted to being obsessed, George saw his wife sleeping with someone even closer. This was where the real trouble began. That was just the beginning of a lie that broke up the Beatles group for good. His birthday is February 25th, 1943, and he was born in a small cottage in Liverpool at 12, Arnold Grove. There were letters, lies, and the popular song Layla. A small coal fire and an outside toilet were the only things the house had. It didn't have a yard. Harold, his dad, drove a bus and used to work as a ship's waiter. His mom, Louise, worked in a store. Louise would listen to Indian music on the radio every Sunday while she was pregnant. She thought that the sitars and tablas would help her relax and calm down. That song would totally change George's life many years later. At the time, though, it was just a faint sound playing in a cold Wavertree house. In January 1950, when George was about 7 years old, the family moved to a public house. 6 years later, in 1956, his mother got him an old guitar for £3.10, which is about £110 today. His life had changed a lot. George cared a lot about the cheap Dutch Eggman guitar, even though it didn't look like much. A family friend taught him how to play simple songs. When that instrument was sold at auction, it was worth more than $800,000, even though it didn't have its original machine parts. At the same time, George heard a sound he had never heard before while riding his bike through his neighborhood. Elvis Presley was singing "Heartbreak Hotel" on the radio. Even though he was only 12 or 13, that event changed his life forever. According to some, he even rode his bike off of something. He thought about guitars all the time after that. George made another big choice in March 1958. In his school books, he wrote, "I was totally into guitars." He quit school when he was 16 and spent his time as an apprentice electrician at Blackler's, a big store in Liverpool. He worked on his contact during the day and played with his band, the Rebels, at night. It felt like I had 2 lives going at once, one with chords and thoughts and one with tools and wires. It didn't last long, but the pay was good enough for him to start getting better gear. In 1960, George was only 17 years old when he went to Hamburg, Germany, with the Beatles. It didn't bother George that the clubs were wild, loud, and full of drunk people. One thing was that he was too young to be there. On his papers, he lied about how old he was. On November 20th, 1960, an angry club owner turned him in. The next day, George was sent away. He had enough cash to get home. Besides that, he had an old bag, a guitar, and an amplifier. Things changed quickly, though. On August 16, 1962, Pete Best was fired from the Beatles for no reason. At 10 a.m., it happened in Brian Epstein's record shop. George, John, and Paul already chose Ringo Starr to take his place, but they didn't tell Pete until everything was over. After only 10 weeks, they finished Love Me Do, and things started to go more easily. Pete Best was a few weeks late for everything. In August 1963, George was staying in a hotel room in Bournemouth. He was sick and bored, and while he was lying in bed, he wrote his first song on his tape recorder. He said it was just a test to see what kind of writing he could do. It was called Don't Bother Me. On November 22, 1963, that song was on with the Beatles. George couldn't sing on another Beatles song for almost 2 years after that. By 1964, things had gone too far. Over the course of 33 days, the Beatles played 32 shows in 24 different places. Because he was so sick, Ringo passed out with a 102 degrees fever and had to be changed for a while. George tried to stop the show, but the people in charge wouldn't let them. Ending the conversation, George said that the worry almost made them all cry. Following a strange event, George saw his first sitar on April 5, 1965, at Twickenham Studios, where the movie Help was being shot. It was just there in the background of a dinner scene. David Crosby from the Byrds told him about Ravi Shankar on August 25th, after a few months. George bought a sitar in London and started to play with it. He played the sitar in Western pop music for the first time on Norwegian Wood, which came out in October 1965. Ravi Shankar didn't like how George played at first, but it didn't matter. There was a brand new sound. By 1966, George felt like he was being left out. Most of the songs were written by Lennon and McCartney. George started to push back while they were making Revolver. He felt more alone with the other people because he was taking LSD and learning more about Indian philosophy. On January 10, 1969, while shooting the Get Back sessions, George said, "I'm leaving the band." And he did. Things got worse. 5 days passed while he wasn't there. After that, he said that he was tired of Paul's bossiness and that he didn't even recognize John because he had been high on heroin. That moment almost ended the Beatles' career. On the other hand, Eric Clapton had a very different childhood. On March 30th, 1945, he was born in Surbiton. Pat, his mother, was only 16 years old. Ed Fryer, Eric's dad, was a Canadian soldier who left before he was born and never came back. Eric lied to himself and thought that his grandmother was his mother and that his real mother was just an older sister. When he found out the truth at age 9, it broke his heart. He stopped wanting to go to school and started avoiding everyone. For his 13th birthday in 1958, Eric got a cheap Hoyer guitar with steel strings. He gave up after only a few months because it was too hard, and he became crazy about writing. He did start playing the guitar again when he was 15, though. This time, they were really excited about it. He formed the Roosters, a blues band, in 1961. In 1963, he joined the Yardbirds. Eric quit the band in 1965 because he got tired of making pop songs with them. What he did next would make him famous and cause chaos. He joined the band Cream in 1966, along with Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce. They made the first rock band ever. But there was trouble going on behind the scenes. When Clapton got back from a long trip, he felt lonely and turned to drugs. There was no more money, no more health, and no more peace for him. Eric was asked to play on While My Guitar Gently Weeps by George in 1970. He played one of the most famous guitar riffs in history on George's Les Paul. After that event, their friendship got stronger. Things got worse for Eric, with George's wife Pattie Boyd, though. In 1970, Eric told her he loved her. George was very angry and told her to make up her mind. Even though Pattie loved George, she stayed true to him, but things were never the same. Because Eric was in love with her so much, they had an affair in 1973. George was hurt by the lie, but he didn't blow up. In its place, he gave Eric a guitar. They didn't say a word while they played guitars against each other for 2 hours. Pattie told Eric after the game that he won not because he played faster, but because he stayed calm. Eric and Pattie broke up with George in the end, and they got married in 1979. But Eric's drug use and angry behavior made their marriage difficult. In 1989, they got a divorce. Even though everything went wrong, Eric and George worked together again in the end. Eric held a show to honor George after he died in 2001. The way Eric played While My Guitar Gently Weeps was truly moving. That was always the right time for George's friendship to get better. In 2002, Eric Clapton gave a tribute to George Harrison that was more than just a tribute to a great musician. It was time for him to leave. Some of Eric's guilt over betraying his friend finally went away after that moving show. He had been holding on to it for years. In front of friends and other artists at the Royal Albert Hall, Eric played the famous guitar solo he had played for George many years before. This time, it was a tribute to a deep friendship that had been going for a long time. The pain of the past seemed to fade away because of the music, the affair with Pattie, the broken relationship with George, and the years of drug abuse. The last time Eric played the song, even though George had died years before, he said he felt closer to him than ever. His hands felt like they were still being led by George, who made him feel better. You could feel how heavy all the stress, regret, and love from the years had become. The show made me feel things. Clapton later said that giving George While My Guitar Gently Weeps at the show was one of the most moving moments of his career. It was more than just a song. It was a party an explanation, and an admission all at the same time. Being able to value his friend and accept the past helped him grow. A lot of music fans and musicians came to the event, which showed how important George was and how close he was to his friends and fellow musicians. Over the next few years, Eric kept thinking about George. He would always remember the times they spent together making songs and being friends. Eric's love and respect for George Harrison didn't change over the years of loss and betrayal. They have been friends for years and have written songs and done things together. Their lives will never be the same again. In the end, George's life and music brought people together in a way that music alone can. His songs were beautiful, he was spiritual, and he was a strong person, as shown by the music he left behind. When Eric listened to George's music, it made him think of what he had lost and what he had found again through forgiveness, thought, and music. People will always remember George Harrison for how he changed his friends, his music, and the world, through good times and bad, fights and loves. And for Eric Clapton, that trip would always be personal. It was a way to make peace, heal, and finally be thankful. Eric Clapton's road to healing went on over time, but the wounds from his past never went away completely. He used drugs for years, had mental problems, and had relationships that were tense, all of which affected his story. However, Eric found a way to show how he really felt through his music, just like George Harrison did. Some of the songs they wrote together, like While My Guitar Gently Weeps, will always be important to them on an emotional, spiritual, and personal level. During the 1990s, Clapton lost a loved one. This was another sudden turn in his life. It's sad to say that his 4-year-old son Connor died when he fell. After this terrible event, Clapton's life began a new phase. It was sad and full of deep thoughts about love, loss, and how music can heal. The record Unplugged, which became one of his most famous works, took a lot of work from him. The sad version of Tears in Heaven on the record came from his pain over losing Connor and his need for comfort. Because he had been through grief and loss himself, everyone who heard the song could connect to it. Eric kept playing and putting out songs that his fans really connected with, even when bad things happened. Clapton's life used to be very busy, but as he got older, he thought about things more and wanted peace in a world that had been very hard on him. After battling his addiction, he got clean and spent most of his time helping other people who were going through the same things. In 1988, he opened the Crossroads Center in Antigua as a place to help people who were struggling with drugs or drinking. He wanted other people to experience the peace he had found. Eric would never be able to get over his past, which included having an affair with Pattie Boyd and having a hard time with George Harrison. People have been able to get along again thanks to Clapton's songs over the years. His readiness to admit he was wrong and his openness about those times gave fans and viewers a rare sense that he was real. The death of George Harrison in 2001 marked the end of a friendship that had been full of love and pain. Even though this terrible thing happened, Eric was still grateful for the music they made together, their bond, and the spiritual lessons George taught him about being humble, forgiving others, and growing. In the years after George's death, Clapton continued to honor their shared past through his own growth and the music they had made together. At performances, he played While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and sometimes told stories about how close he was to George. Clapton saw those songs as more than just shows. They were a way to honor a friend who had had a huge effect on his life. At first, the famous guitar duel between George and Eric in 1973 was a story about lying, but it turned out to be a metaphor for a complicated, painful, but truly human friendship. Two of the most famous artists in rock history showed how they felt through the instruments that made them famous. That rhythmic moment had an effect that words can't describe. It would change their lives and the course of rock music history. In the end, George Harrison and Eric Clapton would be known for more than just their music. They would also be known for their ability to grow, accept others, and think critically. In their lives, both of them had highs and lows, including times when they were having a hard time and times when they were making great art. And in rock and roll, relationships are based on ego and competition. The fact that they got along again shows how music can bring people together in a deeper way that lasts long after the last note is played.